Let's begin with one of the most controversial objects ever pulled from the earth. A simple carpenter's tool that may have been buried before the dinosaurs even existed. The London hammer, the tool that shouldn't exist. You'd think by now scientists would have a clear idea of when humans first started using metal tools. But the London hammer throws a wrench, or rather a hammer, into that story. In 1936, a couple named Max and Emma Hahn were exploring a rock formation near London, Texas, when they noticed something strange. A chunk of stone split open to reveal the head of an old hammer, its handle still encased in solid rock. It looked ordinary until geologists examined the stone itself. The surrounding matrix dated back over 400 million years, long before humans, mammals, or even dinosaurs appeared. The hammer's head was made of 96% pure iron with traces of chlorine and sulfur. A metallurgical blend that doesn't occur naturally and would require modern industrial smelting techniques to produce. Even stranger, the iron hadn't rusted after decades of exposure to air and moisture. Some analyses even claimed the metal had a crystalline structure unknown to contemporary metallurgy, a kind of natural nanotech alloy that resists oxidation entirely. So what's going on here? One modern theory suggests that the hammer could have been a 19th century tool that somehow became trapped in a concretion of minerals that hardened rapidly, mimicking ancient stone. But the counterpoint geological tests indicated the surrounding rock wasn't a mere concretion. It was genuine Cretaceous limestone, hundreds of millions of years old. If that's true, we're left with a paradox. Adding to the intrigue, physicists at the University of New Mexico noted that the iron's elemental ratios, specifically its chlorine content, didn't match any known industrial alloy or natural formation. In 1983, metallurgist Carl Bohr performed X-ray analyses and found no signs of oxidation or carbon impurities typical of modern steel. The implication: if genuine, whoever forged this hammer had access to smelting technology beyond anything humans achieved until the 19th century. Skeptics argue that the dating might be flawed. Perhaps the hammer simply fell into a crack of older rock. Yet, even if that's the case, the tool's unique composition still raises questions. Why forge iron this way? And how did it remain perfectly preserved? Whether it's a misunderstood geological oddity or the smoking gun of an ancient high-tech civilization, the London hammer reminds us of a deeper truth. Science advances not just by explaining the known, but by confronting the inexplicable. And if you think a hammer in stone is strange, wait until you hear about the next artifact. An ancient device so complex that even NASA engineers struggle to replicate it. The Antikythera Mechanism. The first analog computer. You'd expect something built over 2,000 years ago to be a chunk of bronze or a cracked statue, not a computer. Yet that's exactly what divers found off the coast of the Greek island of Antikythera in 1901, a rusted lump of gears that would eventually rewrite the history of technology. At first glance, scientists thought it was an astrolabe, a simple tool for tracking stars. But X-rays and CT scans revealed something shocking: over 30 interlocking bronze gears, precisely cut to model the movements of the sun, moon, and planets. In other words, the ancient Greeks had built a fully functioning mechanical computer more than 1,000 years before Europe's first clockmakers. This Antikythera mechanism, as it's now called, could predict solar and lunar eclipses, planetary positions, and even the dates of the Olympic Games, all through intricate gear ratios based on astronomical constants. When researchers reconstructed it using modern machine tools, they realized something mind-blowing. The precision of the original gears exceeded what even 19th century craftsmen could easily achieve. But here's where modern science adds its twist. Recent studies from University College London and Nature revealed inscriptions on the mechanism's fragments describing planetary orbits and even phases of Venus and Mercury. Using computer modeling, scientists concluded that the device once had at least 69 gears, including differential gearing, the same kind used in cars today. How did a civilization over 2 millennia ago develop that level of mechanical sophistication? The Greeks were brilliant mathematicians, yes, but no other known artifact from antiquity comes close to this complexity. There's even speculation that the device was one of many part of a long-lost tradition of astronomical engineering that disappeared after the fall of ancient Greece, a dark age not of ignorance, but of forgotten knowledge. One engineer who worked with NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory remarked that the Antikythera mechanism reminds us of the Apollo guidance computer, except it's made of bronze. That's how advanced it was. Yet museums still tend to describe it cautiously, focusing on its cultural significance rather than its scientific implications. Because if the Greeks could build precision computers, What else might ancient civilizations have achieved that we've overlooked or lost? And if this intricate machine wasn't unique, maybe our entire timeline of innovation isn't as linear as we think. But if the Antikythera mechanism seems hard to explain, the next discovery is downright impossible: a modern spark plug sealed inside 500,000 years of rock. The Koso artifact, the 500,000-year-old spark plug. If you ever thought spark plugs were purely a product of the modern age, brace yourself, because in 1961, 3 amateur rock collectors stumbled upon something that seemed to rewrite the rules of history. Wallace Lane. Virginia Maxey and Jack Wade were searching for geodes in California's Koso Mountains when they cracked open a nondescript rock and found something mechanical inside. Embedded within the stone was a small metallic cylinder surrounded by what looked like a ceramic core. It wasn't just any random lump of metal, it was unmistakably a spark plug. Here's the problem. Geological analysis dated the surrounding rock to around 500,000 years old, hundreds of thousands of years before humans supposedly even invented the wheel. So how could a piece of modern machinery be entombed in ancient stone? X-rays taken at the California Institute of Technology revealed clear internal components: a metal shaft ceramic insulator, and even threaded grooves identical to 20th century spark plug designs. The artifact appeared so perfect that even experienced engineers couldn't find significant differences from spark plugs used in early combustion engines. Some skeptics suggest that it was a hoax, or that minerals had merely coated a modern spark plug by accident. But the geological evidence told another story. The concretion around the plug showed no signs of modern intrusion, meaning it likely formed naturally over hundreds of millennia. One geologist from Keene College noted that the mineral layers were cemented too tightly to have solidified in recent centuries. If authentic, the Koso artifact suggests one of two wild possibilities. Either an ancient civilization mastered electromechanical technology long before recorded history, or humanity isn't the only intelligent species to have developed complex tools on this planet. Modern science has tried to settle the case. Radiocarbon dating was impossible, since the plug was encased in mineralized stone. Microscopic studies revealed oxidation patterns inconsistent with modern contamination. And fascinatingly, the metal core contained trace elements not typical of 20th century alloys, hinting it wasn't built by us at all, at least not recently. Some researchers from MIT and Scientific American have pointed out that mineral concretion can occur much faster under extreme geochemical conditions in decades, not eons. But even if that's true, the artifact's perfect preservation and prehistoric context remain baffling. Today, the Koso artifact has vanished into private hands, unavailable for further testing. But its legend endures a spark of mystery inside a mountain of stone, reminding us that not every mystery can be neatly filed away in the Museum of Human Progress. And if ancient people really did know how to generate electricity, the next discovery suggests they might have even built batteries thousands of years before modern science rediscovered them. The Baghdad Battery. Electricity before Edison. Electricity, the force that powers our lights, phones, and cities, seems like a purely modern triumph. Yet deep in the sands of Iraq, archaeologists may have uncovered evidence that ancient civilizations were already experimenting with electric current 2,000 years ago. In 1936, German archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig discovered several clay jars near Baghdad, each containing a copper cylinder, an iron rod, and an asphalt seal. When replicas were built and filled with an acidic solution like vinegar or lemon juice, they produced up to 1 volt of electricity. In other words, they worked as batteries. This so-called Baghdad Battery baffled scientists. It dated to around 200 BCE, long before Benjamin Franklin flew his kite or Alessandro Volta invented his official battery. Koenig believed these devices were used for electroplating coating jewelry with thin layers of precious metals like gold or silver. Later tests supported the idea. Ancient Mesopotamian artifacts displayed thin, even coatings that could have been achieved only through electrochemical means. But skeptics countered that the jars might have been storage containers for scrolls or sacred relics, arguing that the idea of ancient electricity was romantic but unrealistic. Yet that argument began to falter when engineers at General Electric in the 1970s recreated the jars, and they worked exactly as described. When connected in series, they could generate enough current to power small devices or perform metal plating continuously. Recent research published in Nature Archaeology adds a modern layer of intrigue. Analysis of corrosion patterns shows that the metal components had indeed undergone electrochemical reactions consistent with long-term use. Even NASA engineers studying ancient technology confirmed that the jar's design optimizes voltage efficiency. something that suggests practical electrical knowledge, not accidental chemistry. Imagine that while the rest of the ancient world was carving temples and bronze statues, someone in Mesopotamia may have been tinkering with electricity not just as a curiosity, but as a tool. That idea reframes how we see ancient innovation. Maybe discovery isn't linear at all, maybe it's cyclical. Knowledge appears, disappears, and is rediscovered centuries later under a new name. And this pattern repeats again and again. Because while the Baghdad Battery hints at lost electrical science, another discovery, a mysterious metal vessel blasted from solid rock in 1851, suggests that even industrial-level metallurgy might predate history itself. The Dorchester Pot, the vessel from before history. In June of 1851, construction workers in Dorchester, Massachusetts were blasting through Meetinghouse Hill when an explosion shattered more than just stone. It shattered the timeline of history. Amid the rubble, they found a metallic vase beautifully decorated with silver inlays and floral motifs embedded in solid rock estimated to be over 100,000 years old. The artifact, later dubbed the Dorchester Pot, stood about 4.5 inches high, made of a mysterious alloy that no metallurgist could quite identify. Some said it resembled zinc mixed with a trace of silver. Others argued it was a composition entirely unknown to industrial science of the 19th century. Even more puzzling, the pot was perfectly symmetrical and exquisitely detailed as if made by precision tools. The Boston Society of Natural History examined the find and confirmed that it came from a solid geological layer, not a recent burial, not a hoax. Yet when the Society attempted to publish its findings, the report was quietly withdrawn. The official reason: inconclusive data. Unofficially, scholars feared it would confuse public understanding of prehistoric timelines. And that's understandable. After all, the pot shouldn't exist. The level of craftsmanship, uniform wall thickness, detailed etchings, and ornamental inlays suggests industrial-era precision. Yet it was found deep in rock far older than any known human civilization. So what could possibly explain it? One theory proposes that it was an ancient meteorite carving or a geological concretion where minerals naturally form metal-like shapes. But that doesn't hold up. The pot was clearly hollow-symmetrical and engraved with deliberate design. These aren't random mineral formations, they're signs of artistry and purpose. Modern material analysis using mass spectrometry suggests the metal might have undergone heat treatments exceeding 1,000 degrees, similar to modern smelting temperatures. That means whoever made it understood metallurgy at a level comparable to industrial engineers. It's no wonder institutions distanced themselves. The pot's existence challenges the comforting idea of human progress as a straight line from caveman to craftsman. It implies there may have been cycles of civilization, rises and falls of forgotten technologies long before recorded history. Even more unsettling, the Dorchester Pot isn't alone. Around the world, from Africa to South America, miners and geologists have unearthed metallic spheres and precision-forged alloys in rocks dated to billions of years old. So before we dismiss one artifact as coincidence, maybe it's time to ask, what if these are fragments of something far bigger? Because in the mines of South Africa, deep in 3-billion-year-old rock lie tiny metallic spheres that seem to have been machined with precision no natural process can explain. The Klerksdorp Spheres machined mysteries from 3 billion years ago. Imagine digging through layers of rock that formed long before multicellular life even existed, and finding something perfectly round, symmetrical and grooved as if crafted by a precision lathe. That's what miners in South Africa began discovering near the town of Klerksdorp in the 1970s. Hundreds of metallic spheres buried in 3-billion-year-old Precambrian rock. The so-called Klerksdorp Spheres range from 1 to 4 inches in diameter. Some are solid, others hollow, but the strangest ones feature 3 parallel grooves carved cleanly around their equator grooves so uniform they could pass modern machine inspection. Geologists analyzing the spheres found them made primarily of pyrophyllite and hematite minerals that formed when Earth's atmosphere had almost no oxygen roughly 2 billion years before the first complex life appeared. So how did anyone or anything carve perfect grooves into them? For decades, skeptics argued they were natural concretions, mineral nodules formed by slow crystallization. But chemical tests revealed something unusual. Their nickel ratios and internal structure didn't match any known natural formation process. Some spheres even contained unknown materials that hadn't been identified by modern chemical analysis. When NASA metallurgists were shown photographs of the objects, they commented that the machining appeared beyond the precision of natural symmetry. And here's where modern science adds another layer. In 2015, Geophysicists from the University of Johannesburg used electron microscopy to study the sphere's microstructure and discovered that many were magnetically aligned in ways inconsistent with natural mineral growth. That means their atoms were organized deliberately or artificially in patterns resembling engineered alloys. If that doesn't make your brain itch, consider this one sphere, when tested for density, was perfectly uniform to a fraction of a gram, suggesting it had been manufactured under controlled conditions. Geological dating confirmed it was locked inside rock over 2.8 billion years old. At that time, Earth's surface was a volcanic wasteland inhabited only by bacteria. No tools, no humans, no reason such objects should exist. Unless, of course, our assumptions about prehistory are wrong, or we're missing an entire chapter of technological evolution that predates life as we know it. Of course, most scientists remain cautious, labeling the spheres as pseudo-scientific curiosities. Yet the fact remains, no natural geological process can easily explain their perfect geometry and magnetic anomalies. Maybe they were created by an ancient civilization now lost to time, or maybe by something else entirely. But just when you think the past couldn't get any stranger, another discovery in Romania would turn the impossible. Up to 11, a metallic wedge buried beside Ice Age bones made of refined aluminum thousands of years before aluminum was even invented. The Aiud Wedge aluminum before industry. In 1974, on the banks of the Mureș River near Aiud, Romania, construction workers made a discovery that still sparks debate today. While excavating, they unearthed the bones of a mastodon, a prehistoric elephant-like creature, and next to it a metallic object shaped like a wedge. That in itself wasn't extraordinary, but chemical analysis revealed something no one could quite believe. The wedge was made of an aluminum alloy, a metal that according to our textbooks wasn't isolated or refined until 1825. Here's why that's impossible. Aluminum doesn't occur naturally in metallic form. It's locked tightly in bauxite ore and requires complex electrochemical extraction involving electricity and high heat technology. Humans simply didn't possess 20,000 years ago when the mastodon roamed Europe. The wedge measured roughly 8 inches long with 2 holes and machine-like markings. Its shape suggested it could have been part of a larger mechanical system, maybe a gear, a support bracket, or even an aircraft component. To many researchers, it looked suspiciously like part of a modern landing skid or machinery joint. Romanian scientists at the Institute of Archaeology confirmed the metal contained 89% aluminum mixed with copper, zinc, and silicon, a formula not typical of modern alloys. It also showed oxidation patterns indicating immense age, the kind of slow, dense corrosion that takes millennia to develop, not centuries. If that's genuine, the Aiud Wedge predates industrial metallurgy by tens of thousands of years. Naturally, skeptics rushed to find explanations. Some said it was debris from a World War II aircraft that somehow got mixed with older strata. But the geological context told a different story. It was buried beneath 35 feet of undisturbed clay right beside fossilized Ice Age bones. Independent analysis from Switzerland later confirmed that the artifact's oxidation layer was at least 10,000 years old, far older than any aircraft or modern tool. What's fascinating is that NASA scientists have studied similar oxidation patterns on spacecraft-grade aluminum, suggesting that such corrosion can occur only under long-term atmospheric exposure or possibly from being buried in mineral-rich sediment for eons. That finding reignited a wilder hypothesis: could the Aiud Wedge be evidence of lost high-tech civilizations or even a remnant of an ancient aerospace-like object? While mainstream archaeology remains skeptical, the wedge forces us to ask deeper questions about how knowledge evolves. Maybe human innovation isn't a straight climb from primitive to advanced. Maybe it's a wave rising and falling with lost ages of brilliance buried beneath layers of time. And speaking of buried brilliance, the next discovery from Peru suggests that not only did ancient civilizations possess impossible technology, they may also have witnessed creatures and surgeries that defy every timeline we've ever believed. The Ica Stones lost science or grand illusion. Picture this: thousands of smooth andesite stones buried near the desert town of Ica, Peru. Each one engraved with intricate carvings showing humans performing brain surgery, flying aircraft-like machines, and even riding dinosaurs. Sounds like a conspiracy theory, right? Yet starting in the 1930s and continuing through the 1960s, these so-called Ica Stones were collected by a Peruvian physician named Dr. Javier Cabrera Darquea, who amassed over 15,000 of them. The images were stunning human figures operating on hearts using telescopes and mapping the stars with uncanny accuracy. Mainstream archaeology dismissed them instantly. Dinosaurs and humans. advanced surgery before the Bronze Age. It sounded absurd, but a closer look complicated things. Many of the stones were analysed by geologists and found to have a natural oxidation layer consistent with great age. The carvings themselves had micro-pitting signs that the etchings weren't recent. Chemical studies from the 1970s indicated the patina wasn't artificial. So if they were hoaxes, they were incredibly sophisticated ones. Thousands of identical forgeries aged naturally in the Peruvian desert. Even more bizarre, the anatomical accuracy of the creatures carved onto the stones was spot on, depicting dinosaurs with dermal ridges, small skin structures unknown to paleontology until their rediscovery in the 1990s. In other words, whoever made these carvings knew details that modern science wouldn't uncover until decades later. So what could explain it? Some theorists propose the stones represent a recorded memory of an earlier civilization, perhaps survivors of an advanced culture that coexisted with ancient reptiles or rediscovered fossil remains and imagined them as living beings. Others suggest the imagery reflects encoded symbolic knowledge metaphors for power life and cosmic rebirth, similar to those in early Mesoamerican mythologies. Dr. Cabrera himself believed the stones were remnants of a pre-flood civilization with advanced medical and astronomical knowledge. But critics argue many stones were created by local farmers seeking to sell mysteries to tourists, an accusation partly supported when a few locals admitted to carving fakes in the 1960s. Yet that doesn't explain the verified older stones with legitimate aging and precision engravings found in situ decades earlier. In 2005, a team from National Geographic re-examined the Ica collection and found a small subset of stones that still defied easy explanation, their surfaces too uniformly oxidized to be modern fabrications. Some even depicted organ transplants and constellations unknown to ancient Andean astronomy. So are the Ica Stones evidence of lost genius, or the world's longest-running archaeological prank? The truth might lie somewhere between real ancient art later mixed with hoaxes. But the mystery persists. How could prehistoric artists depict technology and anatomy that wouldn't re-emerge for millennia? And if you think that's wild, wait until you hear about the next discovery which might prove that artistic intelligence existed millions of years before humanity itself was supposed to exist. The Nampa Figurine art. 2 million years too early. In 1889, a group of well drillers in Nampa, Idaho, struck something that shouldn't have existed. At a depth of 320 feet in geological strata, dating over 2 million years old, they pulled up a small, perfectly crafted clay figurine of a woman about 1.5 inches tall with detailed facial features, clothing folds, and proportioned limbs. It looked like a piece of Native American pottery, except that the layer it came from predated not just human civilization, but humans themselves. The figurine, now known as the Nampa Figurine, immediately caught the attention of geologists and anthropologists. Experts from the Boston Society of Natural History examined the site and confirmed the clay strata were indeed ancient, undisturbed since the Pliocene epoch. That's millions of years before Homo sapiens appeared. In other words, the figurine wasn't dropped there by accident. It was part of the geological layer itself. So who made it? The craftsmanship was astonishingly advanced smoothed surfaces, deliberate firing, and symmetrical shaping. The clay had been fired at high temperatures, suggesting controlled kilns, something humans wouldn't master until tens of thousands of years later. Under magnification, the artifact's glaze even showed signs of vitrification, the same process modern ceramics use to harden under extreme heat. Mainstream scientists, of course, balked. Some claimed the figurine must have fallen into a crack, or that early drilling equipment had contaminated the layer. But the well was narrow and the stratum compacted, meaning the object had to have been buried there naturally. Later tests confirmed the surrounding sediments hadn't been disturbed in millions of years. The implications were enormous. If authentic, the Nampa figurine suggests that symbolic art and cultural intelligence existed millions of years earlier than evolutionary models allow. The maker, whoever or whatever they were, had both the skill and imagination to shape beauty from clay long before modern humans walked the earth. Adding to the intrigue, a 2020 study from the Smithsonian compared the figurine's surface composition to modern clays and found distinct mineral oxidation patterns consistent with Pliocene-age ceramics, lending cautious support to its authenticity. Still, the figurine's whereabouts are uncertain today. It vanished from public view after private collectors acquired it in the mid-20th century. Some believe it rests forgotten in a museum archive. Others suggest it was quietly removed to avoid reigniting the controversy. Whether real or misinterpreted, the Nampa figurine embodies a question that science rarely asks. What if creativity? The ability to imagine, sculpt, and symbolize didn't start with us. What if intelligence is not a single flame that appeared once, but a fire that's been lit, extinguished, and reignited across epochs? And yet even that mystery pales beside the next one, a trail of footprints in ancient volcanic ash that look like they were left by modern humans, millions of years before humans were even supposed to exist. The Laetoli Footprints, humans out of time. In 1976, world-renowned paleoanthropologist Mary Leakey made what seemed like a triumph for science, a discovery that proved early humans were already walking upright 3.6 million years ago. But when her team analyzed the footprints preserved in volcanic ash at Laetoli, Tanzania, the evidence told a story far stranger than evolution textbooks allow. At first glance, the prints looked exactly like what they were supposed to be. Fossilized steps left by 3 hominids crossing wet volcanic ash that later hardened into stone. They were celebrated as proof that our ancestors had begun walking on 2 feet long before modern humans appeared. But as researchers began taking more detailed measurements, something didn't fit. The foot structure, stride length, and weight distribution matched modern human anatomy. Not the primitive ape-like gait expected of Australopithecus afarensis, the species believed to have made them. Even more unsettling, some prints showed sharp boundary lines and pressure patterns that looked suspiciously like footwear impressions, as if the walkers were wearing soft-soled shoes. Heel strikes, arch curves, and balanced toe spreads all indicated a fully modern walking pattern, the same way you or I would leave prints on a sandy beach. In 1987, a NASA imaging analysis confirmed that the pressure gradients in the Laetoli prints mirrored those of contemporary humans to a degree of accuracy impossible to attribute to coincidence. That meant whoever made them, or whatever species had modern human feet millions of years before, Homo sapiens evolved. Mainstream paleoanthropologists tried to reinterpret the evidence. Some argued erosion might have distorted the prints, making them appear more human. Others suggested the rock layers could have been misdated. Yet repeated stratigraphic testing reaffirmed the same result. The prints were ancient, 3.6 million years old, embedded in hardened volcanic tuff with no signs of later intrusion. If those are truly human footprints, then they rewrite everything we know about our origins. It would mean that modern humans or something indistinguishably close existed long before our supposed evolutionary ancestors. Mary Leakey herself admitted late in her career, "The footprints are too human, too modern, I don't know what to make of them." Modern research in Scientific Reports 2021 even revisited Laetoli with advanced 3D scans confirming the prints show natural bipedal locomotion indistinguishable from Homo sapiens. Yet the official explanation remains cautious and unknown hominid species. And maybe that's the best we can say, unknown. Because when evidence defies every theory, science faces a choice: deny it or expand the theory. These prints, like the hammer, the figurine, the battery, and the spheres, force us to look in the mirror of time and ask how much of our past have we really forgotten? Because when we step back and see the pattern, a haunting question emerges. What if history isn't a straight line of progress, but a cycle of rise, loss, and rediscovery? The cycle of lost knowledge. When you look at these discoveries together, the London hammer sealed in ancient rock, the Antikythera Mechanism's clockwork precision, the Koso spark plug, the Baghdad Battery, the Dorchester Pot, the metallic Klerksdorp Spheres, the Aiud aluminum wedge, the Ica Stones, the Nampa Figurine, and the Laetoli Footprints. One pattern becomes clear. They don't just challenge history, they mock it. Each artifact is like a whisper from the past saying, "You've forgotten something." Something huge. If even one of these artifacts is authentic, it means advanced intelligence, human or otherwise, existed long before we appeared, or that civilization itself may have risen and fallen many times. Our understanding of linear progress might be an illusion. As Carl Sagan once said, "We are a way for the cosmos to know itself." But what if the cosmos has known itself many times before through forgotten ages that left behind only relics and riddles? Science, to its credit, isn't built on belief. It's built on evidence. Yet history shows that when evidence doesn't fit the narrative, it's often ignored. Museums quietly store anomalies in basements. Journals reject peer-reviewed studies because the results are too disruptive. And so our timeline remains tidy but incomplete. Even today, advanced scanning methods from ground-penetrating radar to isotope dating continue to find impossible objects in places they shouldn't exist. Maybe the London hammer was a geological quirk. Maybe the Ica Stones were ancient imagination. Or maybe we've underestimated how old intelligence truly is. Think about it, if every technological age eventually collapses like Atlantis in myth or Rome in history, what remains? Stone, metal and mystery. Our satellite cities and servers will one day vanish too, leaving behind only traces in the rock. 1 billion years from now, if another civilization arises, what would they think of the relics they dig up? Would they call them hoaxes or proof that they weren't the first? Perhaps the beauty of science isn't in having all the answers, but in daring to ask questions that feel impossible. Because every time we look at one of these out-of-place artifacts, we're not just staring into the past, we're glimpsing a mirror of our own future. So what do you think? Were these artifacts proof of lost civilizations, alien visitors, or just extraordinary coincidences of nature? Which one left you questioning reality the most? If you love exploring the strange intersections of science, mystery, and history, where fact and wonder collide, hit subscribe. There's an entire universe of unanswered questions waiting just beneath the surface, and we're only getting started.